Welcome to Confident Growth, the podcast where people who are passionate about personal growth and productivity. I'm delighted to have my dearest husband and clinical psychologist, Dr. Greg, with me today, because today we are going to delve into all of your questions about relationships, partnerships, boundaries, compatibility. And Greg, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Thank you for having me on your podcast again.
Why so formal? Today, we are going to start with some reader, or should I say follower questions from our tribe. And the first one comes from a lady who writes to me and says that I have just come out of a 7-year relationship. I'm in my late 30s and I'm experiencing massive FOMO. It seems as if like all my friends are having kids, they're married, they're moving on. And yet I feel like, I'm being left behind. And can you give me any advice on how to be single and happy, as well as advice on how to find a compatible partner? So, Greg, you were single for 40 years, I believe.
Oversharing, huh?
Of course, all the time.
Yeah, so first of all, sorry to hear about your breakup. It's really important to remember that after any breakup, there's a readjustment period, really figuring out who you are as a person, what your needs are, and grieving that process. And then figuring out, well, moving forward, what are you looking for in a relationship, in your own life, and how to prepare yourself for that.
How long does it take for people to grieve?
Yeah, people always ask me, what's the timeline? Particularly Singaporeans. That are,
Yes, what's the timeline?
On time, on target.
Indicative timeline for grieving.
To move on to the next relationship, there is no one timeline. However long it takes for you is however long it takes. But of course, if you've had a very long relationship, if you've been with somebody for 5 years, for 10 years or longer, the grieving process will probably also take longer. But anything from 3 months to 1 year is perfectly normal. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody comes to me after 3 months, after 6 months, and share with me that they're struggling to move forward and become a happy single again.
Yeah, so when people come to you and they are seeking advice for how to deal with the loss of the relationship, the first thing you would tell them is what?
Well, first thing is self-compassion, understanding that what you're going through and your emotions, your pain is perfectly normal and is part of the processing, part of the moving forward. There is no shortcutting that.
But how about if a lot of people write to me and say that they keep on blaming themselves?
Yeah, it's also about self-forgiveness or forgiveness of the partner as well, and letting go of old guilt, old shame, of all the things that may have gone wrong in the relationship.
Yeah, because there's that tendency to pick over, like, why did this end? And was it because of me? And what could I have done differently? What could I have changed if I go back into time? Like, so what do you advise people who just can't let go and keep on playing back all those thoughts in your mind?
Yeah, well, for one, it's good to share with a trusted friend or a therapist if you're feeling really, really stuck. But it's also about shifting your mind away from rumination about all the things that went wrong to recognize what is going well in your life right now and what do you have going for you, whether that's a social relationship, your friends, whether that's re-engaging with some kind of hobbies or something that gives you even a little bit of joy, and shifting from just everything is negative, nothing is going right in my life, to, hey, actually, this is going okay. And then move towards, well, actually, I'm really enjoying my friendship, or hey, I'm really glad I have a little puppy, or whatever it is.
So it's kind of like zooming out so that you're not so zoomed in on like life just equals that one relationship and there's nothing else for me.
Absolutely.
Okay, I want to switch tacks and talk about the second part of this question, which was, how do I actually deal with that fear of FOMO, like that fear of missing out?
First of all, recognizing that we are all living in a FOMO culture where we're always comparing what I have to other people's lives.
Like social media, right?
Yeah, other people's relationships, other people's career success.
It's the perfect FOMO machine.
Absolutely. Where and how much fun people are having on their holidays.
Yeah.
And then it's about recognizing, okay, well, that's other people's lives. It's about also recognizing, well, what is going well in my life at the moment.
And it's also like recognizing that everyone has their own timeline.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like for you, you were single for 40 years, right?
Mostly single for 40 years. Absolutely.
And how did you manage to stay motivated and happy despite not having a partner?
Yeah, first of all, I don't compare so much. It's a very slippery slope when you start comparing to others. then you're always losing out, you're always left behind, and you're assuming they're having such a much better time than you are. It's really about focusing inwards on, even though I may not have a relationship right now, what else can I have success in? I was being quite successful in my work. I was doing a lot of personal development and focusing on my own happiness. Because when I'm a happier person, of course, I become also attractive to future partners.
Well, that's the thing, right? It's one of those ironies that when you are actually looking for something, somebody, you put out that sort of needy energy and it kind of signals to the world like, oh, I need something. And that kind of turns people off, right?
Yeah.
Whereas when you are completely happy in your own skin, like the French say, you know, comfortable in your own skin. You've got everything going on for you. You're happy. You don't need somebody, but you're open to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a very different sort of energy.
Yeah, that I'm already complete or good enough or lovable ultimately. And when I have that energy and when I embody that, actually, you can have a lot of fun and enjoy life on your own.
But I think it's really hard for women because, you know, like that saying, like if somebody is in their late 30s and it's a male, people are like, wow, that guy, you know, he's killing it. He's just slaying it at work, you know, and like he's just getting all the chicks. But if a woman is in her late 30s and she hasn't had a long-term relationship or isn't looking to get married or whatever, people are like, oh my God, you know, that Crystal, yeah, I mean, okay, she's successful, but then so sad.
Yeah, of course, women are judged quite differently from guys and often not in a fair way. And also for women, there's a difference of, you know, a lot of women wanting to have kids. So there's also that biological clock that's ticking in the background.
Or
and then,
if they want to have kids, but society expects them to have kids,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I feel like I was just listening to so many people talk about this. Prof. Scott Galloway, Tings, for example, they were all talking about this whole paradigm shift that, you know, we are coming up to a time in humanity where for the first time, you know, for example, in the US, more women, single females, own homes than single males. And one of the biggest problems is expectations. Because again, several studies suggest that women, when they look for a partner, they are looking to partner upwards, as in they'll only consider partners who are earning more than them, you know, taller than them, of certain criterion. And men, when they partner sideways or downwards, right? So if a whole wave of women are rising up, and if a whole wave of men are actually going downwards, right, as a macro trend, then by logic, there are less men for successful women to date. And women are not prepared to lower their standards. So I hear a lot of my female clients coming to me and saying that, look, I'm in my 30s, I'm in my 40s, I already have my own place, I'm financially independent. Anybody who I partner with has to be net additive to the relationship, has to really raise my levels of happiness. It can't be neutral. It can't like bring me down. And at the same time, that pool is shrinking and shrinking. So would you say that a lot of like this unhappiness is also because of expectations?
Yeah, expectations, and really just this huge shift that we're going through that you just described. And for men, then often it becomes also being comfortable with these different power dynamics, being with a partner that may have a more prestigious job, may earn more money, may have more overt power, and men needing to be okay with that. Otherwise, it becomes a power struggle within the relationship, and then that can lead to conflict or the relationship even breaking up.
Can I overshare something?
Of course.
So like, you know, a lot of my friends, they come to me and they're like on their 7th breakup or something of the year. And they're like, where can I find a partner like Greg? Like you found Greg, you know, where can I find someone who's like emotionally, spiritually, mentally just on the same track as you? And I'm like, you would never date Greg. And the reason for that is because, you know, a lot of my friends are in that same sort of mental schema where it's I only date men who earn more than me or more powerful than me. And when I started going out with you, you know, it was a different power dynamic. Like I was your boss.
You're still my boss now.
I'm still your boss.
You were
but
my
for
boss.
a lot of women, they would not want to date somebody that is not they're equal at
Yeah,
work
of
or
course.
if financially or that sort of stuff.
And you knew my salary when you
and
started dating me.
And I knew your salary.
Down to the cent.
Absolutely. But like for me, that wasn't the metric, right? For me, when I was looking for a life partner, it was like, sure, I probably wouldn't have dated somebody who wasn't financially independent because that's one of my values.
Yeah.
But once you're past a certain threshold, I think like for me, my criteria was much more about growth.
Yeah.
Like when I was looking for a partner, it was, is this person really in sync with my values? And my top two values are freedom and growth. I want a partner that supports my freedom, that encourages me to be me, who loves adventure, who loves growth, is in sync with that. And my second, core most value is having that love, curiosity for personal growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think sometimes people don't even reflect fully on what they really long for in a relationship. And then
Yes.
they just fall back on, it's got to be a very successful man or woman, or got to be, earning X amount of money or whatever kind of house. And that becomes the threshold, or got to look in a certain way.
Yes.
But actually not really checking in, well, what's the more sustainable long-term values or connection that will make you feel really close to them.
Or the automatic filters they apply already filter out a lot of people based on some arbitrary thing.
Absolutely.
So for instance,
Even
it's
how
like,
tall the person is or whatever.
yeah, exactly. So a lot of females, like some studies suggest that maybe like up to 80% or more females would not date a man who was shorter than them.
Yeah.
So it's called the high heel phenomenon,
Yeah.
right? Where every year women generally get taller and taller because of good nutrition and genetics and all of that. And every year men in comparison are getting shorter and shorter, not just literally in terms of height, but metaphorically in terms of earning power. And so at this rate, if women are only going to date upwards, and according to all these, and by the way, I'm not saying women should compromise at all, but I'm just saying be cognizant that expectations are what is so different for this generation of women. Like this generation of women are kind of sandwiched between the older generation's expectations of a certain timeline and the new paradigm shift where they didn't have to take those low expectations. They now can own their own homes. They are highly educated and they can, kill it at work as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yet it still stings to have like those older generation expectations on us that things need to be done by a certain timeline.
Yeah, and then even if you meet a person that may have an amazing job and earn a lot of money that has those criteria, also don't rush into marrying that person if you haven't
Yeah.
actually spent time really getting to know him or her on a
Yes.
deeper level. Because,
Yes.
they may check those boxes, but are they empathic? Are they forgiving? Are they kind? Are they whatever? The values that really will last a lifetime.
So I think this leads us perfectly to our next reader question, which, somebody wrote to me, how do I select a compatible partner? And, we talked a lot about values, but for me, I also think that, okay, let's actually do first the values part, okay? The first part to me is about knowing my own values.
Yeah.
Like I'm very clear, my 5 core values, freedom, and then I've got like growth and so forth, right? And like when I select a partner, that partner has got to at least be supportive or, actively support most of my top values.
Yeah.
And at the very bare minimum, tolerate like those values. So for example, if one of my biggest values is like learning and growth, right? And if I say to my partner, I want to go on this like retreat, this yoga retreat, for example, I'm passionate about yoga.
Yeah.
Like the partners, you've got a sliding scale of how your partner can respond to that.
Right.
On one end of the scale, there's like actively encouraged, like,
I want to come along to the yoga retreat. Sounds amazing.
yeah, I want to learn about that too. I'm so excited about whatever you're excited. That's the extreme. But then like one step down from that is like, yoga's not my thing, but I really highly encourage you to go.
Yeah.
I'm going to lie by the pool and you do your own thing. I'll join you at lunch.
I'm cool with it.
Yeah, I'm cool with it. And then one step down from that is just tolerate. It's like, okay, I guess that's okay, but I'm not going to make noise about it, but I'm not going to be like super enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Right? And then, but what like is really destructive in relationships is when somebody actively shows contempt
Yeah.
or undermines your values. So for example, I want to go for this yoga retreat and then my partner says,
Stupid yoga again. It's such a waste of time. Why you wanna hang out with those hippies in Bali all the time?
yeah, so it's almost like you're mocking me
Yeah.
or making me feel less than or ashamed.
Yeah.
And that's a kind of like a attack to me on an identity level.
Waste of money, time, and just you as a person.
Yeah, because it's something that I value and hold dear, and then you're kind of like pissing on it.
Yeah.
So like, I think it's very, very important, first and foremost, when I find a partner, that my partner, at first I know my values, and then my partner also knows my values and actively encourages and supports me in those values, and for me vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. And also knowing perhaps certain deal breakers, right? If you're a very spiritual or religious person and the other person is totally against that and doesn't support that, it's going to be really hard to find common ground with such a person.
Yeah, or if one person really prioritizes family and values having kids, and the other person doesn't want kids at all, that's a deal breaker.
One is into really healthy living, whether it's food or exercise or just drinking, and the other person is the total slob. That's going to create a lot of difficulties. How are you going to spend your weekend?
I mean, it's not impossible, but I do feel it's very, very difficult if one of your
Absolutely.
core values is something that's completely conflicting with another party's.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, like, other than the values conversation, another thing I tend to look at is like the 4 aspects of self that we talked about in earlier podcasts. We talk about like mental aspect, emotions, physical, spirituality. And I think that for a great relationship, you've got to have like 3 or 4 of those aspects really fulfilled with a strong connection. So what I mean is that, okay, for instance, let's say you don't have like such a strong, say, physical connection with somebody at the start of the relationship, but then like mentally you really click, emotionally you feel safe with this person, spiritually, you feel that both of you have a great sense of meaning and purpose, then you might want to kind of work on that one aspect that is a little bit missing, but I think it can work out. But like if you've got a relationship and like there's 3 aspects missing, it's like, oh yeah, we always have great sex, we have a great physical relationship, but there's no mental connection, there's no emotional connection, there's no spiritual connection, then I think it's really, really hard.
Yeah, it's going to last for only maybe more limited course of time.
Yeah, so do you agree with that, Greg? Because that's just my theory, or like...
Yeah, I think it's good to have connections across these 4 domains, but I think what I always look out for as a psychologist is the amount of psychological flexibility that your partner has.
Okay, define that. What's psychological flexibility?
It's the person's ability to shape and adapt and to dance around the partner in terms of, their needs, their preferences, but also what it calls for moment by moment.
I think so. Like what you're saying is that it's more likely that your relationship has a chance of succeeding if at least one partner is flexible, if not both partners.
Yeah, ideally both. Like, for example, even like, let's say how empathic you are.
Yes.
It's more like understanding, well, who needs empathy at that moment more?
Yes.
Is it about giving or is it about receiving and asking for support? That is flexibility, having range.
I think it's an interesting point because I think you and I were both stubborn. And I think,
you more than me, of course.
And well, yes, and I also think we're both flexible.
Yes.
But what is different is that the areas in which I'm stubborn are not the same areas that you're stubborn. So for instance, you tend to be quite stubborn about timekeeping. Being German, you're very like focused on time.
You're calling me stubborn now?
Yes, absolutely. So you're quite fixated that things have to be like this and has to be punctual. And I'm quite flexible. I'm happy to flow with your needs about that. But then there's other things that I'm quite fixated on. So for example, like, at work, I like really don't like it when I am rushed in certain parts, and you also know like how to flow around that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's recognizing, well, where is the other person a little less flexible?
Yes.
You may call it stubborn, or just not as flexible as you.
Yes.
Or in that moment, and maybe just in that moment, you don't want to be rushed. You need
Yes.
a bit slower pace. You need just a bit more spaciousness. And I, as a partner, see that and offer that.
Okay, so essentially what we're saying is that when you select a partner, and I think this goes for not just love partners, but also business partners,
Absolutely.
any kind of partnerships as well, it's about honoring each other's values and knowing what each other's values are, and also having some sort of multi-dimensional connection,
Yeah.
mental, emotional, spiritual, etc.
One and range as in like, okay, it's great to be a good listener, and
Yes.
it's great to be a person that can be super chatty.
Yeah.
Can you have both? Sometimes it's really good to listen first or hear the other person out if they need to really share something or they're excited about something. And something it's really good to be able to voice out and share about your internal world or what's going on in your life.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next question. We have a next question about like how the hell do we work together? We see each other all the time. We're together 24/7. We travel together, etc. We've been doing this for what, 8 years now, Greg?
Yes.
Yeah, and like, okay, so I
How
think
do we do
how
it?
do we? I also don't. Okay, let me try to break it down. I think there are several elements to why it's easy, and I would say we also have a few unfair advantages, right?
Well, you give me the performance bonus at the end of the year, right?
Okay, I think first unfair advantage is that when we started off, we started off as professionals in a professional relationship.
Yes.
And then the romantic relationship kind of grew later.
Yes.
So it's like from the start, we already had this professional context. So
And we could work well together.
Yeah.
You know, even you being more dominant or having more authority over me was just fine. I didn't have a power issue with that.
yeah, and you're one of those very rare men that really doesn't have like authority issues. Like you're very secure in your own ego. You didn't need to
Yeah.
prove or be defensive or anything. And I think like again, coming back to that professional context, I think where most couples get it wrong is that they start, when they start off in a romantic context and then they start working together, they don't actually put in time to actually have a professional framework. So what's the scope of work? What
Yeah.
are the roles and responsibilities?
Operating procedures.
How does the workflow look like? What is the communication? Are there weekly meetings? Are there, sort of how do we give feedback to each other? But the thing about you and I is the unfair advantage is that all of that was already set in a professional container where I treated you just like any one of my other employees. So like it was very easy for us to maintain that kind of professional, if you will, compartmentalization. When we first started off.
Well, and we both value being professional.
Yes.
As in like the basics of, yes, being on time, doing what we say.
Yes, deadlines.
Deadlines, respect to each other, respect to clients. Like
Yes.
we share all those. We're pretty aligned.
Yes. And I think that comes like number one. I have worked with couples at work who quarreled before, and it was so deeply uncomfortable for the team around them, like family businesses that, you just shudder. And I would never want to do that to my team, my staff, or my clients. Like I would never want to have that sort of like unprofessional relationship taint like the work that I do.
Absolutely. So it's also about regulating or managing our own emotions with
Yeah.
each other, but also with people around us.
Yeah, so I think that number one, the thing for us was like we both love being professionals and we both value that. And we always joke like German Singapore professionalism,
Yes.
right? So that's the first thing. The second thing, I think unfair advantage is that you're damn good at manipulating me. And I always,
Am I?
yes, and I say that in the best possible way. And actually,
Explain.
a lot of people wrote in to ask about how you manipulate me.
How do I manipulate you?
Because you're a psychologist and a psychotherapist, you have a lot of ways of manipulating me. You come up a lot of times when I'm angry or frustrated about things, like you know how to distract me almost like a child. Yeah, I have noticed this. Yeah, like, when I'm angry or annoyed about something, you will like not engage in the heat of the moment, but you will tend to distract me or use some kind of diversion like, oh my God, I just remember I have some amazing oolong tea from downstairs. Let me go and get you a cup of tea. Or like you find some sort of strategy instead of like attacking it head on.
Who's going to win in a power struggle? There's going to be a winner and a loser. And
Yeah.
whether it's a professional relationship or an intimate relationship, you don't want to set it up to be a win-lose, because then there's going to be a loser, and then
Yes.
it's going to undermine the trust or the relationship in general.
But I think part of that manipulation, or maybe not manipulation, but part of that psychotherapy skill is you are very good at early identifying when I'm going to blow up.
Yeah, you got to know the warning signs of your partner.
And you do this for the kids as well. I noticed like for the kids, right? Like you notice very early on, like, okay, this person's cranky. This person's just like itching for a fight.
Yeah.
and then you already kick
Yeah,
me under the
of
table
course.
because like I'm like the bull in the China shop. It's like if you want to go, I will go there, man. I will take you down to Chinatown. But like when I start going, with the kids, and you can sense there's going to be like a nuclear war going on, you literally will kick me under the table and be like, stop.
Yeah, it's about being observant. The more observant you are, you can sense, is your partner or whoever you're working with getting agitated? Are they stressed? Are they tired? What's going on? And if you are part of that's causing that interaction, either remove yourself, give the other person some space, down-regulate your own emotions.
This is acronym called HALT, HALT, which is like stop, right? And the idea is that if you're experiencing any of these 4 factors, you should halt the conversation.
Just exit the situation.
Exit the situation. So these magic 4 factors are...
H for hungry. If you're feeling hungry, a lot of people get hangry.
You get hangry
I get
a
very
lot.
hangry. I'm not good at thinking clearly.
Yes, you don't make sense.
I don't make sense. I'm not good at managing my emotions, and I'm
Yes.
cranky because I crave food.
Yes. So
Not-
I know not to talk to you when you're hungry.
Get some food or offer the other person some food.
So the second one, A, do not talk to people when they are
Anxious or angry.
angry. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So when they're angry, they're activated.
They're triggered.
Yeah. And then things are going to escalate.
Yeah, and
right?
again, like strong emotions interfere with the logical part of our brain. Then you can't reason and be spacious and logical. Not a good time to have a
Yeah.
conversation.
And the third factor that might skew a conversation is like lonely.
Yes, if you're feeling a bit kind of victim mindset, helpless, hopeless,
Yeah.
a lot of pity, again, you're not showing up as your best self.
Yes. And then the last one, the T stands for tired,
Yes,
right?
super important to remember. If you or the other person hasn't slept well, you're starting off your day probably more cranky,
Mm-hmm.
with less resilience and much easier triggered.
Yeah. So it kind of works for kids as well. HALT, do not engage if any of those factors are
Yeah.
present.
So that's why I also often ask couples I work with or people at work is like, do you even check in with the other person before you are having a conversation? Like, hey, Crystal,
this is a good time.
is this a good time? I need something that's on my mind that I want to discuss with you, but I make sure this is okay, a good time for you.
Yeah. I think another important thing is actually having boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think
Super
that's
important.
the third very important factor I wanted to talk about that makes this working and romantic relationship work. So like our house has 3 levels, and like Greg strictly or tries to strictly forbid business on level 3, which is our intimate space, the couple bubble. He calls it the couple bubble level. And so it's like, if I'm lying in bed and I get an email from some client and I really want to talk to him about it, I'm like, Greg, I want to share something with you. Can we go out to the corridor, or can we go down to level 2? Or, sometimes in emergencies, can we run to the bathroom and discuss something? But the worst is like actually talking about work stuff in bed, right?
Yeah, you don't want to contaminate the couple space or the space where you're offline, where you're not in work mode.
Yeah, it's like hygiene.
Absolutely.
Like you don't want to contaminate that space, because then you'll never get into that space of relaxation. And as a couple, you also have to learn how to relax together. And if you're always on, if you're always like at any moment, this device can beep and buzz, and like I'm on call like a soldier, prepared for combat, then you're never going to be in that what we call rest and digest. You're going to be in fight and flight mode. And when you're in fight or flight or freeze, mode, the survival mode, you literally don't digest, you don't rest and digest being the opposite of that mode. And that is also why people spend a lot of time like chronically anxious.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't have boundaries around work stuff and work conversation, then also there's very little connection about other stuff, whether it's music or hobbies or talking about whatever, anything else that's on your mind.
Yeah, so that's why I really like that retreat. We just went on a retreat to Thailand last week, and they had the sign on all of the tables in the restaurant that was saying to respect everyone's mental peace. I'm paraphrasing. We do not allow the use of mobile phones during meal times.
Yeah.
And I just, at first, there was one part of me that went a little bit rebellious and like, oh, why are you telling me what to do? But then after that, I really loved it. I really loved actually being present And for the first time, it was almost as if the colors were more vivid. You know, the smells and the sights and the sounds. It was like my senses were heightened by going on this detox of tech and distractions.
Yeah, so that is a great reminder for couples or friends to be intentional when they're sitting down, maybe to have a dinner conversation. So much of the time do I see people being on their phones and distracted and not really fully present to each other. And then that interferes with intimacy and connection and really being able to pick up what's going on for the other person.
Yeah, it's really sad. I feel like sometimes when people grow apart from each other, it takes something like a breakdown in the relationship before they appreciate each other. And then they remember what, they had lost, or they remember what it was about that partner that attracted them to them in the first place, because they're not doing that sort of like daily appreciation of the other person. So gratitude is life transforming, isn't it, Greg?
Absolutely.
And one of the
do
things,
it every night.
Yeah, I was just going to say one of the things you are absolutely hardcore about is doing gratitude every single night. It's the last thing you do before you go to sleep. Sometimes, I will get a bit annoyed because like I'll be in the middle of something and you go to sleep very early compared to me. So sometimes it'll be like 9:30 and you're like, what are you grateful for?
Not quite 9:30, but I won't push for...
Yes, but at the same time, I'm always happy after we do it. Because even though, it may sometimes to me be like, oh gosh, this again, but don't you know what I'm grateful for? But actually, once I get into it, going through the day allows me to scan the day for the positive and actually like be able to relive those memories again and to actually feel the joy twice.
Absolutely. And it's a great buffer for all the stuff that may not have gone perfectly, or maybe small relationship ruptures that people have on every day, but that we don't remember them going to sleep, that we focus on what's going well at that moment.
Is that why you do it before we go to sleep? You're priming me more manipulation.
Yes.
Priming me.
Sweet dreams about how wonderful I am.
And I think one last important point about a great partnership is I strongly believe that both partners have to commit to doing their own inner work.
Totally.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more with you, because that is the way of us managing our own unhelpful habits and mindsets and old conditioning and biases and how we are flawed in many ways, all of us.
Yeah.
And become a better version of ourselves.
And if you don't know what inner work is, go and watch the episode with Volker Kron about like what is inner work and how to do it. It's essentially about self-awareness, and it's about becoming more conscious of your blind spots, your negative behavioral patterns, etc., and how to break out of them.
And better skills to connect with the other person, better listener, better empathy, better forgiveness, better presence.
Just this morning, Greg, for breakfast, we met up with a client, a corporate client, for the first time, and he shared with us that he was struggling with anxiety. And because of that, a few years ago, he had gone off and done therapy and done his inner work. And it was such a delight to speak to him, right? And afterwards you said like, wow, it's so rare to find a client who's done their inner work already.
Yeah, and men in particular, men are still more reluctant to go, never mind publicly or share it with other people. And just it's something to be really proud of, and I think it's such a courageous act. And I think if you're looking for a good partner in an intimate relationship, go and seek somebody that's gone through therapy. Yeah,
this client was sharing with us that he was having a team meeting, and as part of that team meeting, when they were sharing their struggles, he just announced, shared with everyone that, well, I'd been seeing a therapist and I've been going through anxiety, and then everyone was like, whoa, are we going there? And they didn't expect that kind of vulnerability. But then he said that after he opened up, everyone around the table opened up, and they were sharing about their marital problems, about this, about that, and like having these real honest conversations, and it just completely changed the tone of the relationship. And that's what we mean by the power of inner work, because like when we are in tune with what's going on for us, and when we can speak about it and articulate it, it changes something about our relationships with others. No longer do we blame others, or are we just like, are we just like kids not having the language, but we can really express, this is what's going on for me.
Yeah.
This part is my stuff. This is my shit. And that part is your responsibility. But we can very clearly kind of demarcate and take responsibility for what's appropriate.
Yeah, or ask for support if needed.
Absolutely. Well, as ever, it's been a pleasure to have you here, Greg. Thanks so much for joining us at Comfort at Growth,
Great
the podcast for people who are passionate about personal growth and productivity.
And relationships.
And also eating without mobile phones.
Yay.
See you. Bye.
Bye.